what's wrong with that? You say no matter what, Christmas service should take place on Sunday.
Well, I first want to say that what's happening at Willow Creek is tremendous, and they are demonstrating the kind of innovation that is very significant for connecting with all kinds of people in different settings and contexts. But I think what we also see here is a very different attitude toward the calendar and how Christians mark time. And I think it's important to know that there are some Christian traditions, Catholic, Episcopal, other mainline Protestants, which place a great deal of emphasis on the Christian calendar per se, and then other Protestant traditions, especially the more evangelical traditions, that have downplayed the externals of the calendar. And in fact, Willow Creek and many other evangelical megachurches are simply operating here out of their own de-emphasis of these historic Christian practices, really trying to innovate in ways that connect with people. And it's important, I think, to realize that there are just these two very different points of view in the Christian community about how to mark time, how to keep the calendar.
Let's talk about that, because we've been doing some research. A couple of things I want to touch on, okay? First of all, no one really knows the exact day of Jesus' birth. We were doing a little history, or a little fact-checking, I guess you could say. The Orthodox, the Eastern Orthodox, and the Eastern Rite churches within the Roman Catholic Church chose January 6th, the day named Epiphany, meaning appearance, the day of Jesus' manifestation. So if really we don't know the exact day of Jesus' birth, then why even have this discussion specifically about Sunday and about the 25th? Mark?
Yeah, since about the 3rd century, people have been celebrating Christmas on December 25th, and there has been some disagreement among people as to when the actual birthday of Jesus is. But I think the reason to celebrate it is that we've chosen a particular day to celebrate what's probably the greatest thing that's ever happened in the history of the world, and that is God becoming a human being. So whether we're on the exact right day or not, I think the important thing is that we're celebrating this monumental moment.
John, you know, you brought up history, and once again I want to bring one thing up that we found. Christianity Today wrote a really interesting article. For the church's first 3 centuries, Christmas wasn't even in December or on the calendar at all. It said here that the celebration of Christ's birth was usually lumped in with Epiphany, January 6th, like we mentioned, one of the church's earliest established feasts. And some church leaders even opposed the idea of birth celebration. If you looked at Origen, you know, one of the early Christian leaders, he preached that it would be wrong to honor Christ in the same way that Pharaoh Herod were honored, that birthdays were for pagan gods. A little interesting part of history there.
Well, and not only that, but the Puritan tradition in early America, in its strong emphasis on Sunday observance, downplayed these particular days like Christmas and other days in the Christian calendar, trying to simplify things and just focus on the observance of Sunday. And that actually does relate to a dynamic here. The significant thing about this discussion, or what is surprising from a historical point of view, in a way, is not that churches are not worshiping on Christmas Day, but that churches are canceling services on Sunday. And again, that reflects a different appreciation for or way of acknowledging the calendar that we see.
Well, and Mark, you go ahead and mess with that little IFB there. I know that's sometimes a pain, John. Maybe someone can help you get that situated in your ear so it won't bother you. But Mark, if we biblically wanted to look at the day of Sunday, like John brings up, Revelations 1:10, Mark 16:9, it talks about the Lord's Day, it talks about the resurrection, which is the reason behind celebrating, you know, Jesus' birthday on a Sunday.
Yeah, and we think that celebrating Jesus in general on Sundays, the resurrection Sundays, the day that it happened, and that's the way, the reason why we choose Sunday as our day to celebrate Jesus, is very important. But in the Bible, in places like Acts 2:46, we see that even the early community experienced their worship and community both in large group gatherings all together and also in small group gatherings from home to home. So what we're doing is we're doing a large group gathering to celebrate Jesus the week before, and then we're encouraging people in their homes, home to home, to be able to have a celebration on the day. It's not so much the size of the gathering that matters, or whether there's a pastor present or not, but that people are celebrating God in their hearts and setting aside that time to make sure that He's the central focus of what's happening.
Well, the question came up too, why the 25th? Why is Christmas on December 25th? And according to our research, and we found this through Christianity Today and a number of other articles, that the eventual choice of December 25th, perhaps as early as 273, was because of the convergence of the Church's identification of God's Son, Jesus Christ, with the celestial Son. On December 25th, there were already two festivals, the Natalis Solis Invicti, which was the Roman birth of the unconquered sun, S-U-N, and then the birthday of Mithras, the Iranian son of righteousness, and then a couple days later, winter solstice. So it's sort of interesting that this day was picked. So if it really came down to it, John, right, doesn't necessarily have to be on the 25th.
There are, it's a wonderful story there about the dynamics of history and the ways those days were chosen and the way that the church tried to connect with existing cultural observances and Christianize them. And looking for those connecting points is something that a church like Willow Creek and other large churches have tried to do as well, but to really focus on the explicit Christian content, and I certainly applaud them. I think one of the significant points that I'd like to make is that there are many people in our cultural context for whom home and family is not a satisfying experience. They're estranged from family, they're lonely, and I think in some churches, I think Willow Creek's very thoughtful about the way they enfold people and connect people with small groups. It's a very exemplary thing. But I worry about the churches nationwide who haven't taken into account the dynamics of what life is like for so many people at home.
Mark, just final thoughts, because we've got to wrap it up, but it's true, a lot of people, it's a hard time during the holidays, especially when you're alone. Sometimes you look forward to that Christmas Day service.
Yeah, absolutely. And we would want to say that we want to celebrate the churches that have decided to do the Christmas Day services. We think that for many churches, that's just a fantastic decision. And our desire is to try and say, how can we maximize the opportunity for worship during the Christmas season, the week before and the day of, and have made this decision for ourselves. But we're so glad for the other churches that have made an opportunity on Christmas Day for people to worship in their particular places of worship.
Reverend Mark Ashton and John Witvliet, appreciate your time, guys. Interesting.
Thank you.
Thanks, Carol.